Ever wonder what happened to that hilarious chef from Hell's Kitchen who had us all in stitches back in season 10? You know, the one with the quick wit and the knack for turning up the heat in the kitchen?
Smart ass. You want to be funny now, do you?
No!
Yeah, you're such a d***.
Well, buckle up people, because I'm about to dive headfirst into the absolute wild ride that is Brian Merrill's journey post Hell's Kitchen. But before I unveil the latest information I've got on the man of the hour Brian, let's take a moment to reminisce about his journey through Hell's Kitchen. You see, Brian Merrill was a Chicago-based personal chef with a taste for adventure.
Not good.
Unfortunately, his journey on Hell's Kitchen Season 10 hit a speed bump in episode 15 specifically when he decided to throw in the towel during the service.
Get out. Get out. Fucking idiot.
It was a mistake of epic proportions.
Yeah, it definitely was a tough blow for Brian, but hey, even the best chefs have their off days. But in the fiery chaos of Hell's Kitchen, this man stood out like a shining star. What's more, he actually compared the kitchen frenzy to Disneyland. And do not even get me started on his cooking style. Right from the very beginning, it was so unique.
My style in the kitchen is very, very different. I think Chef Ramsay's gonna like me.
Yeah, he spoke too soon.
Who's whistling?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's me, Chef. My bad.
He also added fuel to the fire with sous chef Andy showing off his flirtatious side. Why am I not surprised though?
Andy's hot with hair and Andy is hot bald. And she's got an attitude, which takes sexy to a different level.
Anyway, this dude wasn't just here to win. In fact, it was thanks to him that season 10 was even bearable, with the women ready to pull their hair out at a moment's notice. And I guess you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, it's people like Brian that made the show fun. Brian made sure to bring his A-game right from the first episode. But was his A-game enough to survive in Hell's Kitchen? Maybe not.
Desserts. What the fuck are you doing? No points.
Even though his dessert didn't impress Chef Ramsay, Brian did not lose hope. And then, later, when things got so tough during the dinner service, especially with Tavon's messed up scallops, Brian got frustrated.
Avon treated those scallops like a homeless rat.
But you have to agree, he had this kind of relaxed attitude that was honestly refreshing to watch. In the midst of the scallop showdown, Brian teamed up with Justin to take on the challenge. But their scallops were not up to par, and Chef Ramsay sent them packing.
You are in for a crap day. I want you to clean the mess outside. That's our entrance to Hell's Kitchen. I've got some amazing prawns arriving. I want them shelled, cleaned, and deveined.
Oh, no, not again. Brian was really bummed out by their big loss, and what followed next was a not-so-appetizing punishment. During their unusual lunch break, he kept his fun spirit alive, even sporting a shake stash and cracking some jokes. Wait, why did I say shake stash? Brian had a better name for it.
Get a scallop stash.
Yeah, I know, call it wits or mindless banter, there was someone who wasn't enjoying, well, whatever that was. Royce cut in and reminded him to balance fun with getting the job done right.
You gotta start acting like men, but we're still acting like boys.
Now, downing that scallop shake was nothing short of putrid. And all Brian was really trying to do was lift everyone's spirits and make everything easier to deal with. However, Brian wasn't exactly feeling the same love from Royce.
Royce is kind of starting to piss me off. I'm not gonna sit there and be all business all the time.
Anyway, later on during the dinner service, Brian had to serve shrimp scampi to the tables, but he got really mixed up with the seating, and this upset Chef Ramsay.
Brian! Brian!
All of a sudden, I hear the voice.
It's urgent. Yes, chef.
What's more, undercooking the shrimp made things all the more worse.
Raw and overcooked on the same fucking table. Start again.
Yes, chef.
Oh man, that yes chef really put some wind underneath my wings. And I'm sure his teammates felt the same. But eventually, Brian put things together and saved the day with a good batch of scallops. And this was not the only time Brian jumped in to rescue his team. In one of the episodes during the Immigrants Lunch Service Challenge, Brian was in charge of making sliders.
Guys, what about the sliders?
You got the slider up? Coming right now, baby. It's go time, and I am going to be there for my team.
But serving them up a la tartare made Chef Ramsay very, very unhappy.
Look at me, all of you. It's fucking raw. This is embarrassing.
It was paramount to serve good food to every one of the guests, and Chef Ramsay wasn't gonna compromise on that. Luckily, with Patrick's help, Brian managed to fix his mistake and cook the sliders all the way through. And well, once again, he managed to save the day in the busy kitchen. Now, despite the blue team's several screw-ups throughout the entire season, Brian was pretty proud of his team regardless of everything.
I'm proud, man. We actually finished dinner service, which is a monumental shift in momentum for us.
But during the Creative Lamb Challenge, Brian was paired up with Royce, and, well, I think you have a fair idea that it wasn't the greatest partnership. Soon enough, there was a disagreement in the kitchen, and Royce decided to ditch Brian's suggestion to season their lamb steak completely.
I was getting a little nervous, but at the end of the day, I did what I had to do. I made perfection.
Brian, on the other hand, was not willing to give up.
Beautiful, golden, sexy little bastard.
I just want to let the fish station know who's boss. It's me.
Damn, this man was so optimistic. But to his bad luck, it never really worked out for him.
The cod is raw. F***ing cat food. F*** off, will you?
How long? 1 minute, chef. You need help. I got it.
I just can't seem to cook fish.
Despite being named as one of the nominees for elimination, Brian wasn't willing to back down and accept defeat. During the deliberations, Brian faced some really harsh criticism. However, he was still extremely determined to prove himself.
Chef, I'm a machine.
You're a what?
I'm a machine.
Machine build cars. Chefs are individuals.
He called him out for not giving his best, and not exactly in those words though.
I'm not looking for a fucking machine.
Despite the close call, Brian survived elimination and walked away feeling like he got a much needed kick in the pants. However, he really struggled to shake off the shock.
That's the most terrifying experience of my life. Just how close I was to being eliminated. I promise you, it will not happen again.
Now, this is when Brian made a solemn vow to his crew, no more screw-ups. And what's more, Clemenza even chimed in with some encouraging words, reminding Brian that he had faith in him. However, deep down, Brian knew that this wasn't just a game anymore. The stakes were sky high. The following day, Chef Ramsay's talk about Mexican cuisine ignited something in Brian. Being a straight-up fan of Mexican flavors, he was pumped and ready to show off his skills.
I love Mexican food. I cook Mexican food. I eat Mexican food. This is my strength. We're winning.
When the challenge kicked off, Brian dove right in, whipping up a shrimp taco with a twist. Although he thought it was simple, he was quite happy with the outcome. But when his dish didn't make the cut for judging, Brian felt defeated. Meanwhile, when Royce, whose dish was chosen for the tasting, had such a poor dish, Brian was pissed. Somewhere deep down in his heart, he believed that his own tacos could have easily taken the spotlight instead of Royce's slop.
My tacos were beautiful, vibrant, fresh. As certain as this is my right hand, Amy would not have beaten me.
Unfortunately, in the end, the blue team lost the challenge by a hair. The team was punished with prepping for Mexican night and chowing down on some tripe for lunch. Brian wasn't exactly thrilled about the whole ordeal, especially with the tripe smelling extremely rank.
Got an awful smell. Nasty, dead. Just keep that shit away from me.
Yeah, I'm sure it was just as nasty as he described it. Anyway, moving on, during the Mexican night dinner service, Brian found himself on the fish station with Guy. It was a really rough ride, with the Blue Kitchen ejecting chefs left and right, but Brian and Roshni refused to throw in the towel. They powered through, finally hitting their stride and getting those entrees out. By the end of the service, Brian was so relieved to still be standing alongside Roshni as the last chefs holding down the fort for the blue team.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Sauce is up.
2 chicken.
Service, please.
It truly amazes me how many times Brian was overlooked, and yet he was the one who ended up saving the day. Anyway, when it was time for picking nominations, Brian and Royce were in sync, agreeing to put Patrick and Guy on the chopping block. Possibly one of the only times when Royce and Brian agreed on something.
Boys and their vultures waiting to feast on my carcass, and I'm gonna bring the biggest fight they've ever seen.
Alright, speaking of Brian, it's impossible not to bring up the Fashion Night Planning Challenge. Brian was so excited to see the models stroll in, not having a clue about what the challenge was about. But let's be honest, he was secretly hoping for some quality time or maybe a cuddle session with one of them.
I have no idea what the challenge is going to be, but I am happy to see these models. Hopefully they want to talk to us and cuddle.
Well, you can't blame him for dreaming big. Even if it did age, well, pretty poorly. Anyway, he teamed up with Justin for the appetizers, and they brainstormed a dish with lobster medallions, aiming for simplicity with a touch of sexiness. Thankfully, despite the rocky start, the blue team clinched the win, scoring a shopping spree and a wine-tasting adventure. But Brian's attention wasn't entirely on the wine. He couldn't help but notice their personal shopper, Elena.
Dress me forever.
Okay.
My heart skipped a beat. She's attractive.
Yeah, he actually claimed that his heart skipped a beat. But well, the fun was about to come to an end as the following day, his team ended up on the losing side. Despite the team's efforts, the blue team succumbed to yet another defeat and was thrown into yet another nomination process in the aftermath. Things got extremely tense when Guy tried to throw Brian under the bus. But Brian stood his ground, defending his actions and even venting some frustration on the punching bag.
fucking helped out as fucking best as I could. Without my help, we would have been fucked.
In the end, Brian dodged elimination yet again, even though Roshni had her doubts. What's more, when asked for his pick, he didn't hesitate, and, well, surprisingly, he had Clemenza's name on his lips. And believe me, that was a twist I never saw coming. Anyway, during the Dome Challenge, Brian went all out with a veal chop dish, adding his own twist with an ethnic fusion flair. But before the judges could even taste his creation, he unleashed a cringeworthy welcome in Italian and Spanish, leaving everyone squirming in their seats.
Giorno, buenos dias, hello.
Wow, multilingual.
Brian doesn't think before he speaks. It's embarrassing. Just shut up.
Even Patrick couldn't hold back his annoyance, thinking Brian should have filtered his thoughts before blurting them out. Despite the awkward intro, his dish wowed the judges enough to score him a decent 6 stars.
Veal chops cook nice. It's cooked perfect. That's a good dish.
Excellent.
Yet, fate had other plans, as the blue team narrowly lost the challenge by just 1 point. The defeat landed them with the glamorous task of cleaning up the dorms and prepping for the dinner service. And I can't tell you how much he hated it. Now, if you thought that Brian's on and off friction with Royce was something, then you have to see the tiff that he had with Tiffany.
Here's how you treated me. You're here, I'm here. Don't do that.
And Tiffany wasn't about to take that lying down.
Shut up. It's not about you in this competition. It's about the customer and the food.
As for Brian, well, he was ready to fire back.
You had no right to fucking come over there and talk to me like a 2-year-old.
Whoa, there was a lot of bickering over nothing. Anyway, Brian had a pretty good hold over the competition in most challenges, but episode 15 turned out to be really different. Before the dinner service kicked off, Brian's comedic instincts were in full swing when he mistook Chef Ramsay's ominous dome for a celebratory cake. What followed next was the black jacket reveal.
What it is the black jacket. You're cooking for a black jacket.
Talk about a sweet surprise turning sour. Assigned to the meat station during the dinner service, Brian's troubles continued to pile up like a mountain of dirty dishes. From raw New York strips to Wellingtons that'd be better off propping a door open than being eaten, his mistakes seemed to multiply faster than he could keep up.
What is this? I got a hodgepodge. Raw, perfect, medium rare, sliced on a fucking door wedge.
Yeah, Brian was gradually losing his footing and he didn't even realize it. Not yet, at least. In fact, there came a point when even Chef Ramsay's patience wore so thin over his antics. In the end, the blue team, say it now with me, lost, and the dreaded elimination loomed large. Brian really tried to keep things professional during the deliberations, believing that the most deserving candidates for the Black Jackets were the 3 men over Robin. However, tensions rose as personal feelings crept into the mix, sparking a heated exchange of words. In a surprising turn of events, Brian found himself up with Clemenza as the second nominee for elimination. Frustrated and disheartened, Chef Ramsay decided to lay down the law by calling the entire team forward.
Unbelievable. One simple task, and we couldn't even agree on that.
In a final plea to prove his worth, Brian expressed his potential to earn that coveted black jacket, but sadly, it wasn't meant to be.
Your time in Hell's Kitchen continues. Put that on.
As the harsh reality of elimination sunk in, Brian couldn't help but feel a mix of shock and disappointment. Despite his energy and humor, Chef Ramsay's decision was clear. It was time for Brian to bid farewell to Hell's Kitchen.
Brian, thank you. End of the road, bud.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you.
I'm shocked that I'm going home. You know, with 6 people left, I thought that there was nowhere to go for me but up.
Now, have you ever wondered how Deerfield's Brian Merrill felt about his wild ride on Hell's Kitchen? Here's something about Brian you probably didn't know. Picture this, a guy battling addiction, getting fired left and right, and then finding success in the culinary world. A lot of that success came from Hell's Kitchen, and he spilled the beans about his time on the show after the fact. He was like, explaining it is tougher than trying to teach a cat how to tap dance. Imagine dropping acid, cranking up your emotions to 50,000, throwing a knife in your hand, and standing in a tiny box. That is Hell's Kitchen for you. Yeah, I think he's pretty much on point with that description. Not that I would have thought of it, but it's definitely right. And well, although it was quite difficult for him, he chose not to break. Now, despite everything that he's faced leading up to it, Brian was grinning ear to ear because making the cut among 10,000 chefs for the 10th season, that itself was a huge win. You gotta give him that at least. However, apparently, when the show started to air, all of a sudden he was the talk of the town. Calls and texts started pouring in, and people were asking if he was single, married, you name it. Turns out, suddenly he was in very high demand.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Right now we're inside the bakery.
Brian also expanded upon Chef Ramsay's legendary tirades. Here's the twist though, in spite of it all, he's got mad respect for the man. And we've seen that time and time again. According to Brian, when Chef Ramsay yelled, it was because he wanted the absolute best. So despite being yelled at more times than I could ever hope to count, that didn't stop him from respecting the man. But let's rewind a bit to Deerfield, where Brian's journey wasn't exactly the typical suburban dream. Instead of the whole college job marriage route, he took a detour to New York, tried acting, dabbled in some risky habits, and then faced a near-death experience. Back home, he went through jobs like changing socks until culinary school came calling more as a get-off-my-back move to his parents than an actual passion. Post-culinary school, Brian's life got absolutely crazy. From sous chef gigs to battling alcoholism, he suddenly hit rock bottom. But a wake-up call pushed him into rehab, and since then, he's been on the straight and narrow. Fired from jobs left and right, Brian decided that he'd had enough of the restaurant grind, sacrificing family time for the kitchen. Well, that's the whole gist of it. Here's what happened to Brian after his stint on the show.
Hi, everybody, Chef Brian Merrill. I'm gonna respond to some of the twats out there in the Twatter Nation.
Brian became a private chef in Chicago, rubbing shoulders with 50 to 100 new people each week. And you know what he said about Hell's Kitchen? It made him fearless. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, scares him now. And it's not hard to see why.
Now, do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get why this is hell?
Since his stint on the show, Brian has been cooking up a storm in the private chef scene, offering everything from intimate dinners to group cooking classes. And let me tell you, he's been racking up some seriously glowing reviews. But that's not all. Brian's also been balancing his culinary talents with a gig as a sales manager at Testa Produce Inc. Talk about multitasking. On the personal front, Brian's got a full house. He tied the knot back in 2015 and had 2 kids not long after to join him on his adventures. But Brian's entrepreneurial spirit does not end there. In 2019, he took a leap of faith and opened up his very own restaurant. He called it Papa Willie's Barbecue. It was a dream come true, but unfortunately, like so many other ventures, it came to a close in 2022. Props for trying though. Now this is where things get really interesting. Chef Brian wasn't just cooking up ribs and brisket. Nope, he took a detour into the world of cannabis-infused cuisine. Turns out, after the camera stopped rolling, he ventured out to Ashland, Oregon, where he specialized in pairing the two. So how did Chef Brian get into cooking with cannabis? Simple, people asked, and he delivered. His clientele? Well, they're as diverse as the flavors that he cooks up. From young to old to rich to poor, everybody wants a piece of the pie.
This one doesn't have it, okay? But you always keep these dry.
Now, let's talk about the nitty-gritty, the science behind cooking with this stuff. According to Chef Brian, it's all about the precision.
At any given time, I will be honest and tell you anything you want to know about it.
From calculating THC percentages to weighing ingredients, there's no room for error. One miscalculation and your dish can go from delicious to, well, still delicious, but a disaster for the person tasting it. But don't you worry if you find yourself in Chef Brian's kitchen, because he's got it down to a science. Infusing it into cooking oil like butter or olive oil is the key. As for the timing, it's crucial. Adding cannabis at just the right moment ensures a flavorful and enlightening experience. Now you might be wondering, is this all just a passing trend? Not according to him. He predicts a future where cannabis restaurants will be as common as your local diner. So there you have it, the wild, bumpy, and downright crazy journey of Brian Merrill from Deerfield to Hell's Kitchen and back. And what do you people think about him? Some describe him as weird, some say that he sings too much, some say that his sense of humor is odd, and some others say that he has creepy eyes. And while many viewers felt that although he was worthy of a spot in the top 4, he wasn't enough of a leader to be a head chef. One Redditor also mentioned that his odd persona will also likely work against him, as he appears to be a very difficult person to be in the same room with. Tough crowd. Now, when I tried to look him up on the internet, turns out he was last active on Instagram in 2022 with roughly about 2,600 followers. So I guess for now, I've got to close the book on this tale of addiction, redemption, and a whole lot of fish. Cheers to you, Merrill. But I want to hear your thoughts. Make sure to drop them in the comments section down below. And drop a like, subscribe, and turn on my post notifications while you're at it. It really helps out. And don't hesitate to reach out to me on my social media pages if you got something to say. But in the meantime, make sure to check out my next video right here since it's even crazier.